So I'm sure my theme today is evangelizing. How do we do that? I'm sure you all know that we're supposed to do that. You've all heard at the end of Matthew's Gospel where Jesus says, "Go therefore and baptize. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I've taught you." We know that we're supposed to do that. The traditional Catholic way of evangelizing has been very quiet. I can't speak to the first 20 generations of Christianity, but for all the ones that any of us can remember, the way of, especially in the South, where our friends and neighbors are knocking on doors and hitting people with Bibles, we're very quiet. We're very, why don't you see what Christianity looks like by watching how I act and how I behave? I'm going to live out my faith, but I'm not going to necessarily tell you about my faith. I mean, that's kind of what our neighbors do. And for those of us who've been on the receiving end of, yeah, but are you really saved? Do you really know Jesus? Because I think you're Catholic, and I'm pretty sure you don't know Jesus. If you've ever been on the receiving end of any of that, it makes us a little reluctant to talk about things with people. It's hard. It's hard, but I want to tell you just a little bit about, yes, of course we have to show people what Christianity looks like by how we live, by how we act. The world should be able to look and say, wow, what is different about them? There's something different about them. What is it? Look at how they love one another. Look at how they treat each other. Look at now, to be honest, if we're honest with ourselves and we're a little self-aware, we know that a lot of times the way we treat each other and the way we treat our families isn't any different than anybody else. Nobody would know the difference. And of course, we have to do better than that. We do. But it's not just enough to live our faith. I think there is a call, especially now, to be able to explain our faith. To be able, and not just to explain the doctrines, to get in a good Bible fight online. Has anybody ever been in a Bible fight online where you're trading verses back and forth and no, good for you. Y'all are. But it's not just enough to be well-versed in apologetics. It's not just enough to have read all the Scott Hahn books and have all the, that's not enough. Because that's really not what the world really needs. The world doesn't need more explainers of the faith as much as she needs witnesses. People who can give testimony. Yes, testimony by your actions, testimony by the way you live your life, testimonies by how you shed your blood. But also just testimony. We should be able to say something about our faith. And that's hard for us. And I think I want to just lay out kind of a rough idea of two things to keep in mind. And the reason I think this is so important right now, 30, 40 years ago, most Americans went to church on Sunday. Almost everybody went to church somewhere. And if you grew up in the South, all our friends were Baptists or evangelicals of some kind or Pentecostals, and they all looked at us like we were a little weird. But within the last 10 years, you'll find that the vast majority of Americans are doing nothing on Sunday. Well, they're doing things. They're just not doing church things. They're not going to church. They're doing other things. But they're not going to church. And so when we live in a world where people don't even... And I work on a college campus. I run into people all the time that their parents, they don't have an experience of church. In my generation, there were a lot of people who rebelled, and I'm sure in any generation you'll find people who rebel against their parents and they don't go to church. Because they were forced to go to church when they were kids, and now they kind of resent it. I run into college kids who've never been to church. Their parents didn't make them do anything, which makes them a little curious. And there's an opportunity there, and I love that. I love running into people they've never been to church. Oh, let me show you something you've never seen before. But that's a different topic. But in this world where religion is, it's just not the thing that you do. I think it's really important for us to be able to explain why does this matter to me? Why does this matter to us? And why should it matter to you? When we're talking to our friends, and they say, "Hey, you want to do that thing on?" Say, "Well, I'm going to go to Mass first." well, can't you skip it this one time? We're going to go, this is important. Well, no. Here's why. It's important to be able to explain, because it's good that we can live our lives. It's good that they can see our actions, but we also need to be able to explain. I want to make the case that it's important. And there are two things here that have to happen. You have to know the story, and you have to know your story. And then be able to put your story in the context of the story. And I'm stealing some material here. I'm stealing some material here from other sources. And you can go find these sources. And you can say, oh, Father Dennis ripped all that information off from Father John Ricardo or from whatever. I don't think he'll care. And if he wants to come down from Detroit Diocese and say something to me, I'd be glad to have him as a guest and take him out. When you think of, like, what is the story? And so I'm stealing this from Father John Ricardo. He has this wonderful way of, and this is the church. This is how do we tell the story? Here's the story. I'm going to give you the story. And it comes in 4 points. The first point is creation. The second point is captivity. The third point is rescue. And the fourth point is your response. So CCRR, creation, captivity, rescue, response. We were made good. God made everything. And He made everything good. And He made everything for the sake of goodness, out of the sake of... And some people may say, oh, the universe happened by accident. And I would say that for me, the preponderance of evidence is no, I don't think it was an accident. I think there's enough evidence to say that something caused it. Everything I've ever seen has a cause. Everything I've ever encountered has a cause. And everything that I've ever run into can be explained by causes. And so then, if you know your Aquinas or your Aristotle, I think the preponderance that God is real and that God made everything. And why did God make everything? The Christians say God made everything because He loves. This is what God does. He loves and He makes and He creates. And He made the whole universe. Of all the things that you've ever seen, of all the things that you've ever known, the wonder of what God has created. If you've ever seen a really striking sunset, if you've ever heard a songbird just catch you off guard, if you've ever fallen in love, who hasn't fallen in love? Not me, I'm a priest, but you know. The wonder of the world all around us, the wonder of everything around us. I have a cat. She's amazing. My cat is smarter than your cat. My cat, now she's not a dog, but if I have food in my hand and I say, smart kitty, she will jump up on 2 legs and balance herself until I give her some food. She's a very smart, and I'm just amazed at her. Because she's a cat. When you look at all the wonderful things that God has made and then think, God made all of this because He loves me. God made all of this because He loves me. God made all of this because He loves you. And from before the beginning of everything, He was thinking of me and you when He began everything out of nothing. And that's mind-blowing. That He was thinking of you and He was loving you even before He made you. When the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, He was thinking about you and how you would be amazed when you first read about dinosaurs in first grade. When the asteroid when the meteor hit the earth and destroyed the dinosaurs, He was thinking of you. When the first little rats crawled out of their holes and started to walk on 2 legs, He was thinking of you. It's everything. He was even thinking of you when He made all of the billions. And Carl Sagan, I hope he believes in God now. I'm sure he does. All the billions and billions of stars and galaxies. And all of that was made. And I don't mean to throw any shade on the gray aliens from the Pleiades who are probably watching this in their underground government bunkers. But God made everything because He loves us. And it's a wonder. The fact that we were made in His image and likeness, and by that I mean that we were given intellect and freedom. We're different than the other animals. And this is kind of wondrous. And all of the animals, all the things God made are wonderful, but we are special. We have something that they don't have. In fact, I believe, and I think this is my reading of the Book of Wisdom, and I don't think this is official doctrine of the church, but it's my own little reflection and commentary on this. The Book of Wisdom says that it was out of envy that the devil rebelled, that the devil hates us for envy. I'm imagining a conversation where the devil says, "You're going to put immortal souls. You're going to make those stupid monkeys intelligent and give them free will and impose your image and likeness on them. What are you thinking? We are made in your image and likeness. We are glorious, and you're going to take the glory that you gave us and give it to them. This will not stand." And you can understand their envy maybe a little bit. But God did it. God made us eternal. And He always intended for us to be with Him forever. He always intended for us to be in relationship with Him forever. And this is the goodness of our creation, of who we are, of who God made us to be. And all the lies that we listen to that say, "You're stupid and nobody likes you. And you don't have any hair on your head and you're fat." Or whatever lies you're listening to, those are the ones I listen to. All of that's just, it detracts from the reality of the goodness of who God made you to be and who God intends you to be. But we have a problem, and the problem is that the first C was creation, the second C is captivity. The second C is that we believed the lie. We believed the lie, and it broke the world. We believed the lie, and it broke the world. We believed the lie that God is trying to keep something from us. We believe the lie that God doesn't want us to be happy. We believe the lie that God is actually not our friend. We believe the lie that we deserve to be happy, that we deserve more than God is giving us. We believed all the lies. And our first parents, instead of receiving, just receiving what God wanted to give them, decided to grab what they thought they deserved. And the whole world has suffered ever since. And in that moment, human beings were taken captive. We all know that we're supposed to spread the good news, right? We're supposed to tell the good news. Jesus came and with the good news, the Evangelion, the good news. Good news, everyone. But sometimes it's hard to tell people the good news until we remember how bad the bad news is first. And it's important to know that the bad news is really awful. It's hard for us to imagine how bad things. I mean, of course, we all know that things are bad, And there are days when we look at the news and we say, "Oh, things are really bad." But to put it in an eternal context, things are really bad. This world is really sick. We've been taken captive by someone who hates us, someone who has abused us and exploited us and doesn't care a fig about us and lives inside our heads and tells us all the filthy things. And this is a strong image, and I hope I don't hurt anybody with this image, but this image is very close to what's really happening. Imagine someone who's been snatched up from their village by human traffickers and thrown into the dark hole and told nobody's coming for you. And all the horrible things we're going to do to you, you deserve it. Because you're nothing. And this is what's happened to all of us. This is what's happened to all of us. In sin, in the brokenness of the world, we have been taken captive. We have been enslaved. And that's the bad news. That's the result of the fall. And it's hard to talk about the good news until we've talked about the bad news. We have to admit that the bad news is awful. And that's part of our story. And if you're going to tell the story, you have to tell the bad news before you get to the good news. And here's the good news. That in the fullness of time, God didn't just send someone to rescue us, but He came Himself. Emptying Himself, the Bible says that He emptied Himself, taking the form of a slave, one who's been enslaved. He takes our form, takes our likeness. He became human. And not just he could have said, well, I'm God, so I'm going to be Caesar. He didn't do that. He emptied Himself and became a baby in Bethlehem, in a Jewish family, in a backwater part of the empire. A nobody. He became a nobody. And He became a baby, and He was helpless, and He grew up like every other person, and He had to learn to read and write, and He had to learn to speak, and He had to learn to mind His manners, because even though He was perfect, do you know sometimes there are things that you just can't figure out knowing right and wrong? You can know right from wrong, but you don't know that you have to tell your grandmother thank you for that sweater that you didn't want. So He had to learn those things. He had to learn the customs, and he deliberately emptied Himself completely so that He could be one of us. And He suffered like one of us, and He died like one of us. Now, He didn't just die. He died a horrible, shameful death. And He bled out, giving every last drop of His blood for us, and every last breath in His body for us. And you can imagine the enemy. The whole time Jesus is doing His public ministry, and the enemy is saying, He tried to tempt Him in the desert. Who knows how many other times He has sent, people. Something's weird with this kid, right? This kid's growing up in Nazareth. Something's weird with this kid. He's not falling for all our normal tricks that kids usually fall for. Something's wrong with him. People are murmuring, maybe he's the Messiah. Okay, maybe he's the Messiah, but I knew the last Messiah, and I got him too. David the king, right? I got him good. And I'll get him. I'll get him just like everybody else. I've gotten every one of their ancestors up until now, and I'm going to get him. And even though he never gave in to any sin, you can imagine the enemy laughing and dancing when they were frog marching Jesus through Jerusalem, carrying the cross, and when they were beating the hell out of Him. And when they nailed Him to the cross, and when He was bleeding, and you can just imagine him, I got him, I got him, I got him. He's going to die like everybody else. I got him. And he didn't even see it coming. He didn't even see it coming. The trap that was laid. Because it was God Himself. And when He rose from the dead on Easter, the evil one's power was broken. The evil one's power was broken. He didn't even see it coming. He was trapped. He was trapped. He had nowhere to run, nowhere to escape to. And now death is undone. And life is restored. And Jesus kicks in the door and says, "Come with me if you want to live." When we thought there was no hope, here it comes. And this is our story. And we've been rescued. We who have been baptized into Jesus Christ, yes, we still struggle. We still struggle and we still break. We still mess ourselves up, but we We know where the hope is. We know where the life is. We know who our rescuer is. And so now we have the next R, response. How do we respond to that? That's the gospel there. How do I respond to that? How is my life different because I said yes to Jesus when he kicked in the door and said, do you want to come? Do you want to live or not? Come with me. You say yes to him. What does that mean for me? It means I'm going to leave behind the lies that I've been listening to. I'm going to let Jesus heal me. I'm going to live a different life. And yeah, sometimes I say stupid things like the Hebrews said like the Israelites said in the desert. You know, back when I was enslaved, at least I had this and this and this. And why did God lead me out of Egypt into this desert? Well, for the sake of freedom. But sometimes I forget that. And sometimes I think y'all do too. I mean, I don't know every one of you, but I hear confessions. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to live different. I'm not going to live in the darkness anymore. I'm going to live different. That's the respond part. And that's the story. That's the story in a nutshell. And if you ever need to tell somebody the story, you can remember it as CCRR. Creation, captivity, rescue, and response. There's the story. That's it. And if you ever have the opportunity to share it with somebody. But it's even more impactful if you can share your story in that context. And so this is where evangelizing, and I mean person-to-person evangelizing. I don't mean standing on a street corner. I don't think that's very effective. Shouting at people on a street corner. That just means you're off your meds. That's not an effective way to evangelize. This is a person-to-person thing. This really is this is a everybody thing. This is not a well, Father needs to evangelize. Don't wait on Father to evangelize. Well, sister's gonna have a program, and we're all gonna get these videos we're gonna watch. Don't wait on sister. Don't wait on Father to. Well, I asked Father if we could have a Bible study, and he hadn't gotten back. Don't wait on Father. Yes, if you're going to use the parish hall, wait on Father. If you have an idea for this thing where you're going to change the way Mass is done at church, and you're going to have glow sticks and flashing lights, talk to Father first. Don't do that. But if it's just a question of should I tell my friends about Jesus, you absolutely do not need my permission. Do not wait on. If we waited on priests, how much would get done, right? Have you met any of us? We're the worst. Don't wait on us. And this is a person-to-person thing. Yes, Father has, and the deacons, the priests and the deacons have a vocation to preach from the pulpit, to preach in the ambo, to preach at Mass. But you're baptized. You have a vocation to preach also. And you have to be able to tell your story. What is your story? How did Jesus change your life? How is your life different because you know Jesus? That's your story. Everybody's got one. You don't have to, sometimes it's really exciting. Did anybody see Father Stu last year, that Catholic movie about that priest? Man, that guy had a great story. He was filled with vanity, and he wanted to go be a Hollywood star, and he was an athlete, and he was all full of himself, and he thought he was everything, and he turned out he was, when he finally realized he wasn't everything, and he gave his life to Jesus, and he became a priest, and then even in the midst of all that, and he had the struggle through disease and brokenness, and his body didn't work the way he wanted it to, and man, he had a foul mouth. That's a great story, but you don't have to have that story. I mean, there are stories of, people that, overcame drug addiction and everything. You don't have to go be a drug addict to have a good testimony. Please don't become a drug addict to have Your testimony is just as good of what Jesus has done in your life. I used to be this way, now I'm this way. And what happened in between was Jesus. I love this The TV show The Chosen is a good show. Some of y'all have seen it. The first episode was my favorite. That scene where Mary Magdalene, at the end, Mary Magdalene is explaining how she's different. And she says, well, that's not at the end, but towards the end of the first episode, she says, I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. All I know is that once I was one way and now I'm another way. And what happened in between was him. And you can tell that same story. I can tell you the story about all the stupid things that I did when I was in my 20s and early 30s before I went to seminary because I thought I knew everything. And to be honest, when I was in seminary, I knew everything too. If you've ever met a seminarian, I live with them every summer, and I'm like, oh, you're a seminarian? Yeah. So you know everything. And I could talk about all this, all the dumb things that I did before I finally wised up and left all that behind. But you could tell your story. Maybe your story is about, family problems or marriage problems or whatever. There's a guy in Memphis who has not that you want to go and find a great story, but there are lots of stories. Everybody's got a story. Everybody who is currently following Jesus can look back to a time when they weren't following Jesus and something changed to make a difference. There's a whole bunch of people in the Memphis area, and I know that we're kind of still in the Memphis area, though we're in North Mississippi, that can point to perhaps their Cursillo weekend. Can point to their Cursillo weekend and say, I was going along thinking that I was a good Catholic, and then I realized I wasn't that good of a Catholic. And I made my Cursillo weekend, and suddenly everything opened up for me. Is this true or not? Is there any Cursillo? Yes, you can confirm this. Yes.
Well, we did one together.
Yes, we did. A lot of people, and by the way, I can't just as a commercial. If you've heard of Cursillo, there's a Cursillo weekend coming up. When is it coming up? There's a men's weekend coming up September 7th, 8th, and 9th. There's a women's weekend coming up October 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. These are weekends where people who are, the point of the Cursillo is to take people who are nominally Catholic, they're going to church, they're not necessarily really, on fire about Jesus, yay, Jesus all the time. They go to church with their families, but to take them from being what you would call like a nominal Catholic into being oh my gosh, this changes everything Catholic. I've got to tell somebody kind of Catholic. Have you ever met those kind of Catholics? I've got to tell everybody everything. And if you're already one of those Catholics, who's, oh my gosh, I've got to tell everybody everything, you should make a Cursillo too, because it will give you a set of tools that you will have in order to share what you've received. I can't recommend Cursillo enough for adults. It's one thing that I've noticed that really makes a difference in terms of evangelizing in this area. And there may be other things in other parts of the country that are doing the similar job of taking the nominal Catholic and turning them into the on fire, I'm going to change the world because God has given me the power and has called me to do this kind of Catholic. Because that's who we should be. Can you imagine if we had parishes filled with Catholics who knew that God put us here to change the world? God put us here to change North Mississippi. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been. We're going to change it. We're going to change it right now. If our churches were filled with Catholics who understood that we've been called to this work of evangelization, well, there's no power on earth that could stop us. None. How many of y'all like football? Some of y'all like football in the fall, right? I always like to say, if it's a Saturday in fall, the Tigers are losing somewhere. But there are teams in the SEC that are feared all over the country. True or not?
Yes.
Yes. Can you name like Ole Miss is feared sometimes.
Alabama.
Alabama is always feared.
Alabama, LSU.
You know what I like about Alabama? The campus ministry center there was paid for by the Alabama football coach. He built the whole thing. Roll Tide. Oh, go Tide. Sorry. Well, there are teams all over the country that fear Alabama. Wouldn't it be interesting if hell feared us? Wouldn't the world be different if hell was afraid of what was happening in the parishes in North Mississippi? If the devil had to call a conclave to say, what are we going to do about those Catholics in North Mississippi? Jesus said that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Now, if you think of what a gate is and what it's supposed to do, a lot of times we think, oh, the church is going to stand as a bulwark and hell is going to attack and the church is going to stand. That is not what that image means. That image means that we are besieging hell and it's going to collapse before us. Christianity is on the march. And what if hell was afraid of us? I think sometimes hell is not afraid of us. Some days hell is not afraid of me. Some days they've got me right where they want me. I'm just going to be honest with you. Some days they have, oh, Schenkel, you're so smart. Oh, Schenkel, you're so good looking. Yes, I am good looking. You've made so many sacrifices for the church. You deserve an Oreo or two. Yes, I deserve a whole bag of Oreos. But what if instead hell feared us? That's the image that I want to leave you with. What if we put them to flight? What if they had to have weekend conferences asking, what are we going to do about North Mississippi? Everybody's loving Jesus. Everybody is sharing their stories about Jesus. And it's the Catholics that's making it happen. Nobody would have thought of that. Y'all have to do this. Y'all have to do this. There's too much at stake. There are too many people that are still living in darkness that don't know that the door has been kicked in. They don't know that there's a way out. They don't know, and they're waiting on somebody to tell them. They're waiting on somebody to show them. They're waiting on somebody to love them and tell them that the lies they've been listening to are false. There's too much at stake for us to just sit at home and say, well, I'm just going to be a good person. That's all I got. Thanks. Yeah, right. Sure.
Okay. Anybody?
I'm a smart person. I'll answer your questions.
I'll start.
Okay.
So, from your experience, what are some of the things that keep us from speaking up? I can think of, I don't know enough. And I'm sure there's a balance.
Sure, I don't know enough. I'm not sure. So sometimes there's prudence involved, right? So if I see someone that clearly needs Jesus, but I don't have a relationship with them, and I start quoting Bible verses at them, that might not be very effective, right? So if you went to daily mass today, you heard Jesus say, "We have to be as shrewd as serpents and as simple as doves." We have to have some. We have to have. So sometimes we have to have standing with the person. We have to have a relationship. I work with college students, and there's an organization that goes on college campuses, and they work as missionaries on college campuses and introduce them to the Bible, introduce them to Jesus, invite them to Bible studies, invite them to Mass. And I work with these people, and one of their things is you have to make friends first. You have to make friends first. Yeah, Curcio has the same model. Curcio says, make a friend, be a friend, bring a friend to Christ. You have to be friends. You have to have some kind of relationship first. The words out of your mouth can't be, "Oh, I see what's wrong with you. Let me fix you." So sometimes we're a little worried. Like, so the prudence is, do I have the standing? Have I built the foundation yet? Is it time to speak? Is it time to say something? And I understand that. Sometimes we're not sure if it's okay to speak. Sometimes we're not sure if it's our business. Sometimes we're not. But so it requires prudence and courage. Both of those things. Yeah.
You briefly mentioned at least the college group.
Yeah.
They will be here in October.
Oh, the Focus Missionaries?
So can you talk a little bit about that, and the person that's in charge of them, whose parents happen to be...
Right, so Rebecca Zachary's parents are here, and Rebecca works for the campus ministry of the Diocese of Memphis. She's an alum of the Diocese of Memphis. Before she came to us as an employee, she was a missionary on the college campuses. I think she was at Southern Miss, and where else?
Southern Alabama.
Okay, South Alabama. And she worked as a missionary on a college campus for 4 years, 2 years, 2 years. 2 years, and so she knows what that work is. And David tells me that in October the guest speakers are going to be some Focus missionaries who work on the campus of the University of Memphis. And Rebecca. And they're going to be talking about the important work on college campuses. And so I think that's an interesting topic, and I hope you'll come to it. I won't come to it. I work in that world, but I might come. I love these people. We'll see. Yeah.
We are working on a campus ministry at Russ College and Northwest Mississippi Community College. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I think just a brief word about college ministry. There's an opportunity. If you've ever been to college, not everybody goes to college, and college isn't for everybody, but if you've ever been to college, you know that you will never have more free time in your whole life than you did at college. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And also, college students are willing to try new things. And of course, parents are so worried about sending their kids off to college because what if they try all the wrong things? But college students, they want to try everything, right? And some of them want to try church because they've never seen church and they've never heard of church and they don't know what it is. And so we get curious. We get church curious kids all the time. But it's an important work, and it's a work that can impact generations, because there's a window there where people are open to new things, and once they start careers and families, they have less time to pay attention to that stuff. So it's an important work. There's a wedge there. We get a lever in there and start moving things. We can do something that we won't have an opportunity to do at other points in their lives, really. Yes?
How about in your own family? Like when your siblings, you know.
That's hard, isn't it?
Whoa.
That's hard. Yeah, my own family, my brothers don't necessarily want to hear from me because they know me. They know that I'm their idiot brother. So here's what I think. And a lot of you probably have family members who aren't going to church anymore. Maybe your own children who've broken your hearts, which is hard. There's a few things that you can do. One is stop nagging them. Please. Stop. 2, you fast for them. You pray for them. You make holy hours for them. You make sure that they know that you love them, you love them, you love them. It doesn't matter where they go or what they do. You love them, you love them, you love them. Then when they're ready, maybe they'll ask you about it. Maybe they won't ever ask you about it. Here's something to pray for. Maybe they won't listen to you because of some past hurt or some past relationship, or because they have whatever opinion they have of you and they're never going to change their opinion of you. There's somebody that they will listen to. There is somebody that's going to be in their orbit that's going to say something. Pray for that person to show up. Pray for that person to show up and be filled with the Holy Spirit that day. Pray that the right people get in front of the people that you love. And then be ready. Then be ready when they come and say, a friend of mine was talking to me about church, and I know we went to church growing up, and what am I supposed to say? And then you can say, well, here's what I've learned. And you can take it or leave it, because you're a grown person and you can do what you want. We don't remain silent, but we don't, please don't guilt them. Or that's well, if you've ever been guilted by your own parents, well, I'm thinking here, I'm imagining here children, but gosh, the last thing I want to do is the thing that my mother was trying to make me guilt me into doing, right? So, just be very gentle there with that stuff, and then love, 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 and pray that the right people get in front of them, and make real sacrifices for them. You know, I'm not going to drink coffee today because of my child. I'm not going to drink coffee today. I'm not going to watch TV today because of my brother. I'm not going to make some real sacrifices. Do some fasting. That's very powerful. Those are my suggestions. Back in the corner, Cadence Bank. Thank you for sponsoring this evening.
My mother and relatives grew up in 50s.
Yeah. I think this is similar. Don't push, don't tell, but show. Show them how your life is different because you're going to Mass every Sunday. You know, there's a, I don't know if y'all are aware of this. If you're Catholic for 10 minutes, you are aware of this. There are some, you know, there are liturgy wars going on, and there's conflicts over, you know, well, I'm a John Paul Catholic. Well, I'm a Benedict Catholic. Well, I'm a traditional Catholic, or some of that, let some of that go, and be very loving, and just be very loving. Gosh, those are hard places to be in family life. And if they're like Mother Church isn't the church anymore, just try to prove them different by how you live and how your life is different. There was one other in this. Oh yeah.
Is there a government ministry as such? It seems like there's some high up Catholics that are promoting perversion and abortion.
Yeah, I hope they have pastors that'll talk to them. I don't know. Yes. Okay. Yes, there are plenty of leaders in our country that are poorly formed as Catholics. I would say that. I think we could say that, and I think you don't have to be a member of any particular political party to say we've got leaders in our country that are poorly formed as Catholics. We've got some people. You know, to have the kind of ego necessary to think I deserve to be in the Senate, you've already got some problems. So we should really pray for them, and maybe even set aside a day and I'm going to fast for the governor. I'm going to fast for the president. And gosh, I hope they have pastors that talk to them. I don't know the priests in Washington who talk to these people, but gosh, we should pray for them too. Those pastors in Washington and the non-Catholic pastors too. We could pray for them. Somebody here had a question. No? Here, yes.
What do you say? Like I have a lot of young girls at my work.
Okay.
And since I'm the old lady in the office, they'll come to me.
I don't think that's right.
They'll
Okay.
say something, and I'll say, well, you know, if you're a Christian, then you'll approach it. And they'll go, no. Because everybody that says they're a Christian and they go to church, but they're talking about people and they're treating my kids terrible, or they're doing, how do you say no, everybody's that way? I don't know how to change their attitude. They're so angry about our society. They're very, very angry.
Find the things that they care about and find out. So the question is, what about when we're dealing with really young people who are very angry? There are some young people who think if one more person says X, Y, Z to me, I'm going to lose my mind. And there's kind of a general permission that you're allowed to lose your mind now. When I was growing up, you're not allowed to lose your mind ever. But how do you deal with that? And I think find out what they're interested in and what they care about. You know, maybe they don't care about, I don't know, maybe they don't care about family life, or maybe they don't care about, but maybe they care about the planet, or maybe they care about, they care about something. And I know, okay, well, climate, blah, blah, blah. But if it's something they care about, try to find ways that you can connect to them. Try to find ways that you can show them I'm not your enemy, because I care about some of the same things that you care about, and we love some of the same things, and try to find the place where you can walk alongside them and not stand in opposition to them. And that may take some work, because sometimes they just want to be in opposition to everybody, but if you work at it, you can find a way to walk alongside them. That's the posture that we should have, is to be able to walk alongside people. I saw a hand over here. Yeah, hi.
How do you address somebody who has been emotionally hurt and having been married to a Catholic that hurt them?
Well, Catholics hurt people all the time, don't we?
Right, but when they use
How do we-
that as a reason to define all Catholics?
Yeah. Again, you have to prove them that they're wrong by how you love. If somebody says, I'm not going to believe anything that a Catholic has to say about religion because I knew that one Catholic and they were horrible. It's even worse when they say, I knew that one priest. Or, yeah. And who hasn't? If you live long enough as a Catholic, you've had at least one bad confession. No? And, I mean, we hurt people. And just as people, we hurt people. I'm not just saying as clergy we hurt people, but clergy too. And how do you tell somebody, how do you show somebody, well, no, the whole church isn't wrong, the whole church isn't bad, the church is good. You met somebody who was actually just a horrible person. And I think that you show them by how you love. You be the counterexample. If you love them well enough, they won't be able to say Catholics are bad, because I know her. I remember that summer that I was in Guatemala learning Spanish, and there was at a Spanish school in Guatemala. You like study Spanish abroad. There were flyers on colleges all over the United States and even in Europe. Come study Spanish abroad at this little school. And so I was there, and there were these girls from Denmark, and they were college students. And you know how 19-year-olds are. I think they know everything. And I was in seminary, and I knew more than they did. And they got to throwing shade on America. Like, America's always starting wars. America, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, I didn't do all. I'm just here. I'm sorry I'm an American. Sorry I'm an American. But by the time the summer was over and they were headed back to Europe, and I said, once again, I'm glad that I met you, and I hope that. And she said, I hope you don't hate America. And she said, they said, how could we hate America when there are good people like you living there? And the same thing could be true for the church. How can we hate the church when I've met you? Yes.
We've got 66 young teenagers who are going to be making their confirmation in October.
That's nice. 66 people are going to make confirmation. Okay. And the bishop is coming. The bishop is coming. I hope they know all the 7 spiritual gifts of the Holy Spirit.
Because I always tell them the bishop's going to ask them questions anyway during the Mass, but, just to make sure they know their stuff. But the question comes up, and Patty's here, and I know Donna, the other DRE from Christ the King, is that we're getting into that part with these young people that once they become confirmed, that they need to go out and talk about their faith, about Jesus, evangelization. So would you use the story and your story, the CCRR, or would you use a different approach?
I would use that exactly. And then I might, yes, I think that, I told the story a little intense, didn't I? Captivity and that was a little intense, but y'all are grown. But I would use that. I would use that model with them. I would go ahead and do it. Now, they may not be at a point in their life where they can know, how has Jesus changed my life? For a 14-year-old, they're not sure how Jesus has changed their life. They may not have gone through the darkness enough to know where the light is. They don't. So maybe, but they should at least know the story if they don't know their story.
Yeah, because they don't want to talk about it because they get hit with all the stereotype ideals about Catholics and what we do and things like that. So they stay quiet. But you're trying to get them to move out of that darkness or whatever. Well,
you're trying to get them to not be timid because their friends are asking them, I heard you worship Mary.
Y'all alcoholics. They get that one too.
I just want to add to this conversation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't apologize.
I think that we have a lot of youth a lot of like, do this or going to hell in younger grades. And so by the time they become teenagers, they disassociated themselves with that very punitive type of, if you make a mistake, you're going to hell. And we need to be a much more, I think, open, like teach Jesus' words to our youth, as opposed to just like, you're going to hell if you make a mistake.
And part of that is,
I had my kids affected by it.
yeah, the whole, and I'm going to repeat it so that people can hear. When children hear the message, when little kids hear the message, if you do this, you're going to go to hell. If you do that, you're going to go to hell. The idea of a punitive moral system, a punitive moral code, can be very scary to young people, and can make them think that God is taking notes, and he's Santa Claus. God is going to punish those who are good. He's going to reward those who are good. He's going to punish those who are bad. Well, that story, the Santa Claus story, is fine for a 7-year-old, but the Santa Claus story is not sufficient for someone who's grown. In the same way that idea of God, that idea of God might work for 5 minutes for a 6-year-old, but when somebody's getting older, they need a better story. And so telling them, you've got to change that. You're going to hell. Do you not realize you're going to hell? That story is not an impactful story for a lot of people. Hey.
But I'm a parent teacher. I'm in 6th grade this year. One of the things I taught my 4th graders when I started was we have that sacrament of reconciliation.
We do.
It's not all you're going to hell.
No, it isn't. You're all going to hell. But
I don't know who's teaching that. Who's saying that they need to stop.
They hear it from their friends. Yeah. They don't understand. I've got kids at my last church who, like, their parents had told them, all the gays are going to hell. They're just automatically, if you're gay, you're automatically going to hell. Now, I don't want to get into a whole argument about, because this is I'm running short on time, but I don't want to get into a whole culture war thing. But just because somebody has a feeling in their heart about, maybe I like boys, or maybe, that doesn't condemn what your behavior, how you live your life. That's everything. But I couldn't tell that to the kids, because they come back the next week and say, no, Mom and Dad said you're wrong, Father. Okay. There's a lot of stuff in people's homes that are incorrect too, and I don't know how to fix all that. But the story that we have to tell is a story of love and redemption, a story of a God who would leave everything behind and bleed out to save you. Even when you're dumb, and even when you're stupid, and even when you're hateful, and even when you're mean, and even when you're listening to lies and spreading lies yourself. Thank you for letting me come tonight, Yeller. I love being here. Thank you. North Mississippi gives me hope.